Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the contemporary world. I am Dr. Kenneth B. Romero, your course instructor. Today, we will talk about contemporary global governance. Lecture structure. These are the lessons that we will discuss today. Lesson 1. Global Governance. Lesson 2. The United Nations. Lesson 3. Challenges of Global Governance. Global Catastrophic Risk. Lesson 1. Global Governance. In the present period of rapid and extensive global change, the constitutions of national governments and their treaties have been undermined by the increasing demands and solidarity of ethnic and other subgroups. Although the concept of global governance is relatively new, many theories have been in place for some time. In addition to the end of the Cold War, the debate on globalization has been an important source of the emergence of theories on global governance. Economic globalization, for one, leads to a power shift from state to market, which is an important factor contributing to the emergence of global governance. Along with the globalization of economies, other changes became apparent, such as the surge of global social movements, the shrinking of political distances by microelectric technologies, and the mushrooming of global interdependencies fostered by currency crises, AIDS, and terrorism, all of which touch upon the subject of global governance. These centralizing and decentralizing dynamics have undermined the constitutions and treaties of national governments. Governments still operate as sovereign powers in a number of ways, but some of their authority has been relocated toward subnational collectivities. What is governance? Governance is a system of rules that are dependent on intersubjective meanings as on formally sanctioned constitutions and charters, or a system of rule that works only if the majority accepts it. In other words, governance is the term for the way a group of people, such a country, do things. Many groups create a government to decide how things are to be done. Governance is different from politics. Governance is also how government decision making affects people in that nation. Is governance synonymous with government? The answer is governance is not synonymous with government. While governments perform activities that are backed by formal authority and monopolize police powers to ensure the implementation of duly constituted policies, governance performs activities backed by shared goals that may or may not derive from legal and formally prescribed responsibilities which do not necessarily rely on police powers to overcome defiance and attain compliance. The most formal is a government, a body whose sole responsibility and authority is to make binding decisions in a given geopolitical system, such as a state, by establishing laws, while governance is the way rules, norms, and actions are structured, sustained, regulated, and held accountable. What is global governance? In the global context, global governance means governance in the global arena, referring to all the governance that occurs throughout the global order. Therefore, global governance implicitly indicates the global shift from statism to integration, as well as the fragmentation of actors in the international arena. There is a possibility of a global transformation from the primacy of government to that of governance. According to the Commission on Global Governance, which was established under the UN in 1995, global governance can be defined as the sum of the many ways individuals and institutions, public and private, manage their common affairs. It is a continuing process through which conflicting or diverse interests may be accommodated and cooperative action may be taken. Global governance is a term adapted to account for the foregoing changes in the increasingly globalizing international arena in the post-Cold War era, underscoring the search for the coexistence of a wide variety of international actors without privileging any one specific actor such as states. To sum it up, global governance is a process of cooperative leadership. This term may also name the process of designating rules, regulations, and laws. It is concerned with the issues that have become too complex for a state to address alone, such as military conflicts among or within states, climate change problems, humanitarian crises, economic imbalances. These are some of the issues. Moreover, global governance brings together diverse actors to coordinate collective action at the level of the planet. The goal of global governance, roughly defined, is to provide global public goods, particularly peace and security, justice and mediation systems for conflict, functioning markets, and unified standards for trade and industry as well. Why we need global governance? Do we really need it? We need global governance because national policies has a direct effects on a country, good or bad. But its global effects on other countries cannot be ignored. Global governance stresses on cooperative forms of conflict management. It helps nations to develop their capacity to deal with the challenges of globalization. Global governance includes citizens' participation in the global decision making. The globalized world needs global governance for its continuous process of balancing different interests and initiating cooperative action. The basis for this is the coordination of national policies and identification of shared norms and rules. Examples include financial market regulation through the Bank for International Settlements and the guidelines for multinational enterprises set by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Furthermore, global governance must also initiate joint action and bring resources together, as is the case in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group. Forms and formats of global governance. Global governance manifests itself in various forms. International agreements, such as the trade rules of the GATT and GATS, comprise one aspect of global governance, and international organizations, such as the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, comprise another. Furthermore, loose groupings such as G7 and G20 and informal discussion fora like the World Economic Forum also contribute to the effective global governance. The actors of global governance are as diverse as the forms and formats. Besides, governments and international institutions, relevant actors also include civil society and businesses. Their participation ranges from simple consultation and in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development to decision-making powers in the Internet governance. Now let us proceed to Lesson 2, the United Nations. The leading institution in charge of global governance today is the United Nations. It was founded in 1945, in the wake of the Second World War, as a way to prevent future conflicts on that scale. The United Nations does not directly bring together the people of the world, but sovereign nation states, and currently counts 193 members who make recommendations to the UN General Assembly. The UN's main mandate is to preserve global security, which it does particularly through the Security Council. In addition, the United Nations can settle international legal issues through the International Court of Justice and implements its key decisions through the Secretariat led by the Secretary General. Introduction to United Nations. Applaud as when we prevail, correct as when we fail, but above all, do not let this indispensable, irreplaceable institution wither, languish, or perish as a result of member states' indifference, inattention, or financial starvation. Kofi Annan. The purpose of United Nations is to bring all nations of the world together to work for peace and development based on principles of justice, human dignity, and the well-being of all people, not intended to be a world government. The chief principle, national sovereignty. This means that borders, laws, and traditions of each country cannot be intruded on by any government, by any international agency, or the UN itself. Exceptions to this rule occur when the Security Council agrees that there is a significant threat to peace and security. History of the United Nations. The Charter. First named by President Franklin Roosevelt during World War II. UN began as a declaration among Allied governments against Axis powers. After war, the UN as we now know it was chartered at the United Nations Conference on International Organization in San Francisco, California on June 26, 1945. Final ratification of charter by main member states occurred on October 24, 1945, the United Nations Day. 51 original member states. United Nations Charter establishes conditions for membership, sets purpose and structure of organization, lays out fundamental rights and principles that apply to all member states. International treaty. All members expected to observe mandates of charter as international law. Expectations of member states in UN Charter. Fulfill in good faith obligations, payments and dues. Settle international disputes by peaceful means. Refrain from the threat or use of force against another member state. Assist the UN in line with the Charter. The Charter does not give the UN any authority to intervene in domestic matters of any state. What has the United Nations done for the world? First, improve international health, immunizing children, fighting malaria and deadly diseases, providing safe drinking water, eradicating smallpox. As a result, life expectancy has increased all over the world. Second, more international law has been developed through the UN in the past 60 years than in the entire history of mankind. Third, UN relief agencies have given aid and protected more than 25 million refugees throughout the world. Fourth, 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Fifth, more than 80 other human rights treaties. Sixth, strengthen democratic processes by assisting in elections in over 70 countries. Seventh, World Food Program. The world's largest food aid organization provides 1/3 of world's food each year. Structure and function of United Nations. Main UN organizations. United Nations is comprised of 6 main organizations. Number 1, General Assembly. 2, Security Council. 3, Economic and Social Council. 4, Trusteeship Council. 5, International Court of Justice. 6, Secretariat. Now let us proceed to Lesson 3. Challenges of Global Governance, Global Catastrophic Risk. First, climate change. Catastrophic climate change has been associated with an increase in global average temperature. This level of global warming would probably imply a serious shift in global climate patterns, unprecedented loss of landmass creating large flows of climate refugees, significant risks to regional and global food security, a combination of high temperature and humidity jeopardizing normal human activities, as well as massive species extinctions having adverse cascading effects on ecosystem functioning and services critical for sustaining humanity. Second, nuclear warfare. On August 6, 1945, a nuclear bomb exploded in Hiroshima, killing some 70,000 people within the day. In total, almost a half of the city perished from the effects of the bomb, half in the heat, radiation, fires, and building collapses following the blast, and another half before the end of the year from injuries and radiation, bringing the total number of deaths to some 150,000. Since then, the world has lived in the shadow of a war unlike any other in history. Although the tension between nuclear states has diminished since the end of the Cold War, and disarmament efforts have reduced arsenals, the prospect of a nuclear war remains present and might be closer today than it was a decade ago. Third, ecological collapse. Ecosystems are the foundation for human life. They perform a range of functions, generally referred to as environmental services, without which human societies and economies could not operate at their current level. We depend on the services they provide for air, water, food, shelter, and energy. Ecosystems can tolerate a measure of impact from human use and recover relatively quickly with minimal negative effects, an attribute generally known as resilience, but beyond a certain threshold or tipping point, sudden and radical disruption occurs. Under such conditions, soil quality, freshwater supplies, and biodiversity diminish drastically, while agricultural capacity plummets and daily human living conditions deteriorate significantly. Fourth, artificial intelligence. Human intelligence has led to the greatest triumphs of humanity, but it is also behind some of history's greatest catastrophes. So, what happens if we create artificial intelligence that significantly is smarter than any person? Will it help us reach even greater heights? Or will it trigger, as some experts worry, the greatest catastrophe of all, human extinction? Pandemic COVID-19. Pandemic is a disease outbreak that spreads across countries or continents. It affects more people and takes more lives than an epidemic. The World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic when it became clear that the illness was severe and that it was spreading quickly over a wide area. The coronavirus COVID-19 is affecting 214 countries and territories around the world and to international conveyance. According to the website of worldometers.info, on October 10, 2020, At 2:08 Greenwich Mean Time Zone, there are 37,103,875 coronavirus cases, 1,072,665 deaths all over the world, and 27,895,727 total of recoveries. With proper governance, life will improve for all. Benigno Aquino III. Nobody is exempt from the trials of life, but everyone can always find something positive in everything, even in the worst of times. Roy T. Bennett. So, that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much. For the evaluation of your learning, I will be sending the link on our group chat.